So let's see. Welcome everyone. I can see there are a few of you. Sorry for being a little bit late, but I got a new graphics card yesterday, and when I upgraded that, I calibrated all my monitors yesterday, and I thought everything was perfect. But then I changed my resolution on my center monitor so I can do my streams, and all of a sudden the calibration went haywire. But apparently I can't recalibrate it while I'm having the stream thingy. So, hi Pete Bog, welcome. So we have to live with that. The colors are slightly skewed a little bit, so no fancy color work tonight, or I can check it on one of my other monitors just in case I'm a little bit worried. But I don't think that's really going to hurt us that much. I just wanted things to be perfect, but that's something you can never really achieve, but we'll see. So I'm going to fire up the file here, and tonight's thing will be rivers, and to add and tweak and go over some of the rivers, especially in the dry steppes area of the north of the Sulhout Mountains and the Baclunish West, because there is some lacking stuff that needs to be added there, and probably some tweaks and stuff. So that's what I want to go into, and if there's time over, then we can always go back to do islands again, like we've done the past couple of weeks or couple of live streams. So let's see, once we have the file open here. Okay, I hope everyone is doing good. I'm having a good time. We had a big thunderstorm in like a little over an hour ago, 2 hours ago. So I unplugged my computers and stuff and was hoping for the best, but it seems to have all died down, and it's good now. So we didn't lose power. So, but it was one of these tropical storms. So it was kind of awesome, and it rained a bit here too. We haven't had rain since like I don't know when, March or something. Okay, so this is the area of interest today. So I'm especially keen on this basin here, the dry steppes area, or the Paynims area, because this needs to have some drainage, because you have some of the biggest mountain ranges here. When you have the seasons here, that means that there will be some okay, Mr. Kendall. So welcome, and so where are you located? So I'm in Southern California between LA and San Diego, but inland on the east side of the Santa Ana Mountains. So we got some thunderstorms today. So this area here is the thing I'm interested in, because I've done some added some rivers here in all to drain the mountains here. So okay, then I'm 50 miles away from you. Welcome. Good to have you here. So these mountains, every spring and summer they should kind of give off some significant amount of water that needs to drain somewhere, and it drains east on the eastern side, but this side here needs to dry to drain and create. So I added one river here, but that was not enough, so we need to add a major river going west out into the Gulf of Gaillard eventually, and then we need to add rivers going here and here. And I simply assume that this, back in wetter times, this was a large lake and we only see the bottom of it. So these rivers here are not present all the time. These are seasonal ones. So every spring, summer, there is probably a little bit of water coming, and then as the temperature goes up, and this is a hot desert, that means that they disappear. So I had a little bit of traces here, so we need to kind of work in. Hi Christopher, welcome. Yeah, you don't have much mountains. We have plenty of mountains, but not much water. So, but today we got a little bit. So therefore, it's time to kind of go in here and see what we can do in adding rivers, and we might have to tweak the terrain just a little bit to accommodate them. So what I first want to do is to sketch in where I want the river so we can see what would work and kind of get to. Yes, yeah, Pete Bog. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have that in mind too. So yes, Alex. Yep, flood potential. Yes, definitely flash floods in spring and probably early summer or so on, and at certain times when you have melt water coming from the mountains or rainfall even up in the mountains, that might lead to some coming down the into the plains. But then when the hot summer comes around and large part of the year the hot desert will evaporate most of it, so it's just a trickle. But I assume that that's not always the case. Like pre invoked devastation and earlier when the climate might have been colder, this was probably a major river or at least much bigger than it is today. So there should be remnants of it, and we should have some remnants of the lake here as well. So that's what I wanted to do. So let's create a new layer here and just see what we can do in sketching it in. So I'm going to add white just so we get a white layer, and then we can mask it up and on and off as needed, so to speak. Yes, maps dynamic based on season. Yes, that's one of the things that I'm experimenting in World and or in using World Machine. So when I use 3D, because then I have all the data. I have the elevation data. I can even put in how wet certain areas are certain times of the year, and I can tweak the textures depending on the data of that month, etc. So that way I can, that is something I'm looking into, to make different textures for different times of year, and due to wet seasons, like we can have things for like monsoon seasons and all sorts of stuff. So yep, so that's something I'm looking into, having that program that to make different versions, so you can kind of tweak it in different parts of the map will vary differently due to the year, so to speak. And now I'm going to hold down Alt and create a mask. So we mask it away, and then I'm going to create a little going to look at, see what we have for brush settings here. So I'm going to have probably about that hardness, and maybe not scattering, but at least have a little bit of, there we go, and just so we don't have these perfect. So but this is only kind of a test layer, so no biggie. And then I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger, something like that. So I assume that this is the lake, was the lake area, and that had the Baklunish capital, or the Karush, or Kanak, depending on if you go by Gary's name, if you go by the TSR approved name or published name, or you go by Gary's name. So that was here, and I simply assume that that is on here on some outcropping, and this was the biggest, deepest part of the lake, and then the lake was kind of much bigger around here as needed. So but that's something that I have to tweak if we do a proper 3D model, so to speak. So I have to do the 3D model after what we do today. So that is the key. What we do today will be guiding in the future. So let's just go and see where we can. I simply assume we have the embryo of a river valley here, and we have a bunch of dried out lakes. So I'll see what we can zoom in a bit here, and then we can connect these, so to speak. So maybe that is a little bit too big. So we can go something like this. Oh, that is big. Let me zoom out and see how big that is compared to other rivers. Yeah, it's way too big. We go with, that's 15, so we can take that back, and then we go with, we can go with a 6, I think. That is probably good enough. Now we can zoom in here, but okay. So let's just go in here and Now I'm getting too fussy right away here. I know I should just be kind of, I'm just making a way through the, and then we're going to follow this as the valley in here. I'm trying to see if I can pick something that seems to be a natural way through the landscape here. And then we have a really flat area here, so we can have a little bit more meanderings and stuff. And then we go into the lake here, and then out of, hang on a second. Now we need to simply assume that we can, yeah, I'm going to keep that part there. And now I think I want to go south here and then move into the next lake there, and then we go from here in here, and then we go in here. I'm going to kind of expand on these lakes a little bit here, and then we go in there, and then we go through here, and we have to create a bit of a valley in there, and then in here, and then connect that one in here. And now it's time to this. Oh, hi Jason. Yeah, the scale here is, hang on a second, we have the hexes here. So there we have 12-mile hexes. I can apply them. So here, each of these hexes here is 12 miles. So this is large. Yeah, the Silk Road. Yep. And I bet that there was, or probably still is in Greyhawk, a trade route going from here and west to Bakluni's lands further west. Probably not a big trade route, but a small one, so a little bit of a trade route. I'm just finishing up my drink here. So, okay, so let's go back in, and like you can see, I actually made a blurry path here that I actually planned to do this, and then I forgot about it or something, so it kind of fell off and didn't happen. So now is the time to go in and see if we can finish this, and then we do it that way. I'm going to just paint over this bit here, and then follow the trail here a bit here, and make sure that things are. And what I'm painting here is not the water level. This is the river valley, so to speak. And then, so if the river was going to be fully full of water, then this will be the full water table, so to speak, the full river valley. But look at most rivers, especially the ones that are in temperate area or in areas that are very seasonal. Then you have like a wide river valley, and then you have like a little channel that meanders in the big river valley, and they're usually full of boulders and mud flats and stuff like that. So, and then occasionally the whole valley looks like it's flooding, so to speak, when the river is peaking. And then in between there's just a tiny little river, that a stream in it, that, so to speak, that meanders through the river valley. So this is the whole river valley, and then we have to paint in a tiny little blue stream going through this into it as well. But that's the finished thing. So this is the first, just to see where so if we have the river in the right spot or not. That's the first goal of this, to get it settled. And I'll try to keep an eye on the mini navigational window there to see if we going in the right direction. But this is my second attempt at doing this. The first one was kind of, I don't know, I cut it due to time or something like that, so I was waiting for a later opportunity, but now it's the time to do this. And then we can have even more of meandering, because rivers tend to meander when they go out into plains, so to speak, where they kind of slow down and meander, and they deposit a lot of mud and stuff, and that's why they clog up, and they have to constantly changing their flow path. But when there's like natural valleys and stuff, then they they can't meander. They will just cut through the landscape, so to speak. And we might have to go in and adjust some of these the surrounding landscape to get it to match. That's the next thing to do after this. Okay, now comes yeah, there is a river path here. I can see it all the way through, so this was easier than I thought in a way. There is something we need to tweak a little bit, maybe. We'll see. And here is a, can actually do like this. The water flows from the mountains, so it flows from from the mountains here down to here, and then it flows west and into the Gulf of Gayar further west outside the map. That's the direction of the flow. And then there's one river flowing into the little lake Udrukar that is only the remnant of what probably was a much larger lake when the climate was cooler back in the day. So we have to make all the tributaries into this lake Udrukar as well. So I will work on them too. And I repeat again that this is not a major river in the current time. It's just a river valley of an ancient major river, and now it's only a minor seasonal river that flows through it. So every time there is a big snow melt in the mountains, a lot of water will come down, but through the evaporation through the desert and the lake and stuff here, there is not much water that will actually flow through this river. It's only a tiny little bit. So therefore this river is mostly an ancient one that is kind of have left its mark on the landscape, but not much more than that. Okay, so there we have the outlet here in this end. Now it's time to look at the other tributaries going into the lake. We have a couple here, and we have one here that I've already messed up. Well, I haven't messed it up. What I've done is that I simply assumed that it will evaporate once it's gotten here. But I've looked at other rivers in the real world and started to think about that it's probably not appropriate. It should have a channel going all the way down into the lake, so to speak. It should not have a delta here. I think that's not really appropriate. So I'm going to use the channel here because it's good that we have two tributaries going into parts. So I'm going to take it from here, and now it's time to go from 6 to 3 probably. So, yeah, we can probably go to maybe even 2. Yeah, 2 is good enough. So I'm going to make a bigger one and turn the color to black and then paint over this and go down to 2 again here. And then it's time to start figuring out what we can do. We should probably go this way and then down there. So I'm going to follow this here and just add to here and then paint over the ugly ones. First I'm just going to mark these off. That's just a signal to me that we need to remove them after we're done, and then that didn't look that good, so I'm going to undo and hang on a second. Going to put, there we go. So I want a little bit more meandering here. I can probably widen it a little bit. There we go. That's starting to look a little bit like a natural river in inflow, and then I'm going to try and work my way through the landscape here. Yeah, so this is kind of tedious work, and now I have to figure out a way that look, and this might be needing, but it looks like it's lower here. It's probably the best there, so I'm going to just work my way through here. Then we have to adjust the landscape as needed here, so we can kind of make it to look realistic. That's why when you do real, or not real, but virtual 3D terrain, you have to really take all this into account, that the landscape actually slopes the right way, so you get drainage basins that actually make sense, which is sometimes much trickier than it first appears to be. It can be really tricky, both for to kind of create it, and also for the software to work it out. So there's a lot of tricky things to think of, and there are a few tools that can you do it on a large scale, but not that many can do it on the detail scale that we require to when you start doing maps at this scale, or even higher scale. Then you need to have certain tools, and World Machine is the only tool I know of. There are some other old tools that can, Wilbur and others can do it, but they can only do it on a really, really large scale, and they do it automatically, so you can't change the terrain saying that I want a river at that specific spot. It will simply create rivers that kind of meanders through the landscape and adjust the landscape. World Machine has a lot of cool capability built in, but it's still kind of primitive. So there we have a first river going in. Now we need to start looking at what the valleys. There should be one here, and then we have one there that goes to that lake, so we need to make that one and that one probably go in and join in that direction. So let's look at this and see here. We should probably, now it's the interesting bit here. That one goes from here, which I'm not going to adjust the landscape that much here. I'm just going to let it start there. That's something for future, and I'm not going to, this area here should probably have a lake up here. That is kind of cool. There are these are prime areas for lakes. Since we're just working on yep, there are lots of canyons. We have one good one here. It's an interesting valley, and we have we have here, and we have a major one here, and we have here and here. So there's plenty of valleys and interesting stuff. So I'm going to sketch out some areas for that should have lakes in them here. Here we have an interesting canyon that is the eastern end of the escarpment here, and I know the escarpment is not a Gary thing, but it comes afterwards. So yep. Hey Patrick. So I'm going to go in here and sketch out some of these areas and see where it could be appropriate to put a lake in. I think this area here is now that one can be covered. This here definitely looks like a good site for a potential lake site. So I'm going to sketch out something here. There is something, and then it needs to be refined a little bit and stuff. So that can be a meltwater lake, because you can see it's has no outlet, so to speak. So it's a depression with no outlet, which means that it should have a lake. Anything west of the dry steppes might might have, it's so far inland and it's in the desert zone on the planet, so to speak. So I don't think it has subtropical. Subtropical is would be further south, so to speak. If if the but those are not Gary's things. That's what Roger E. Moore and others have analyzed the planetary data afterwards, so to speak, and come up with. So that's what I've been working with. So, but you can always tweak it a bit. In the canyon, well, canyons have a tendency of being even drier than surrounding lands, so to speak. So especially canyons up in the mountains, with especially tall canyons with mountains around it, mountain valleys are usually often depends on what the direction they're in, but if they're in an area like this, they're probably even drier than others, except at the bottom, so to speak. They can have a very good dry climate, but they can still have a lake because, like, these mountains are so tall that they catch the weather at the top and deposit snow and ice, and then when that melts, that forms lake like this in the depressions. So we'll see if we have some here. Well, around it, yeah. If it's, but it needs to be low elevation too, because it's cold up here in the mountains. So it's, I don't think it will be subtropical up in the mountains, but in lower areas it will be. But subtropical will be further south a little bit, or definitely, and also closer to the coast, not far inland when you have thousands of miles to the ocean. But we can definitely, this is a fantasy world, so you can always tweak things in fantasy, so to speak. Well, we should have a little lake there. Hi David, welcome. Well, I've been doodling around here. It's rivers in the dry steppes area and stuff. So right now I'm just looking at some of the depressions here in the mountains to see if there's any good potential obvious lake sites, so to speak. So here is another obvious lake site. We can kind of block that off as a little lake there. And we can, like that, and then we can add another little lake in there. So exactly, Jason. I got that sense too. That I think that goes with a lot of fantasy authors. Even if they know something about the climate, they want cool stories with interesting story elements. That's why you tend to, all these kind of in between climates tends to disappear. You get the extreme ones. You have a jungle here, a desert there, a tall mountain here, and so on, and polar. So all the in between climates tend to disappear. The with in between ones, I mean like the steppes, the cold deserts, the kind of the, yeah, a lot of these kind of not so extreme climates tend to disappear. The different varieties of deserts and stuff. It's only the hot desert, not the cold one. And because a lot of this, especially the eastern part here, is probably so high up that it's not a hot desert, it's a cold desert. So it's only hot in a few summer months, but the winters are often brutally cold, just like the nights are. So it's mostly dry, but and dry and sometimes hot, but not anywhere near as hot. More like Central Asia has a lot of these kind of cold deserts rather than hot ones. Okay, so let's go back up here and look at the rivers again. So we need to have, so I'm going to let that lake be, and I'm so tempted now when I see these kind of lake depressions here. I'm so tempted to add some lakes in the depressions here. So I'm going to add some lakes here in the depression. There we go. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. That is the truth is I'm one of the few that is obsessed with these kind of details, but to me I like it because it helps me tell more interesting stories, and if you have interesting maps that have geography in more interesting ways than just the kind of most standard fantasy basic tropes, it helps to make more interesting nuanced stories that have, and you can tie into history and stuff. So I think it's an important, often overlooked part. when you look into this. So climate is really interesting. It can play a big part in making empires and destroying empires and stuff. And in a fantasy world, you can have divine intervention changing the climate, so to speak, rather than direct magical force. You can have the gods or something that could actually go in and tweak the climate and therefore create things like the twin cataclysms and end an empire and stuff just by changing the 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 climate in a certain area. Okay, so here is, I think, an obvious start that a river comes out of here. So I'm just going to start making the river here. So I'm going to make it disappear into the dark there, in the shadow, and then we start making it downstream here. Yeah, David, this is me just extrapolating, and I know that this looks cool, but it's not really. I'm already trying to translate this into proper 3D, and I know that when and if I get into this area in World Machine and stuff, I need to start. I will use everything I've done here as a reference map, so to speak. So yeah. Yeah, and I want even fantasy landscapes to and worlds make sense from their own perspective. Meaning there are certain things and aspects in a fantasy world that we don't have in a real world. You can have various fantastic forms of tectonic stuff. The planet might be made up of the four elements and not like atoms and stuff like you have in the real world. But I want D&D physics, so to speak, and fantasy physics and to make sense from its own perspective. It should live up to its own laws, whether they include divine magic, godly interventions, demonic whatever, and stuff like that. So I want the world to make sense due to its own laws. And I love to try and reverse engineer fantasy worlds that are different from ours. I want the river to go around here and then through here or something to create some interesting waterfalls or something. Yep, yep, Alex, that is something. That's what I've been doing with cold earth and hot earth. And for my seminar at Virtual Greyhawk, I'm going to analyze that, and to my patrons too. I'm going to to analyze the outcomes and make some interesting conclusions on how you can use it and what it can tell for the future, so to speak, and how you can use it in your campaign, because there are some interesting conclusions we can draw from it if you choose to use it, so to speak, because you might say that the climate might have been the same all the time in your version of Greyhawk, or the setting. Oh yes, yes, David. There are. Yep, Jason. Logic, internal consistency. I want to have that. You can change it over time, but due to fantasy divine interventions, but it should follow its own rules and logic. Yes, David. There are several examples. There's a couple of examples of underground rivers. There is one in Keelland, and there is one in the Ernst. There's the one. Hang on a second. Let's go and check it. The Franz River. And now we need to zoom out a bit here. The most obvious underground river in, oh, we see, I clicked almost on the right one. It's here. And this is something that needs to have a cleanup or something, because I'm going to, I'm going to put that on the map. Maybe we can clean it up if we get time over today. And here you have this area here is described as the origin of the Franz River. To me, I think it's just one of these hiccups when they did the when they started from near Div and just drew these rivers, and all of a sudden there was no room for this one. So I'm probably going to change, because this river here is my kind of my addition. So I think I will change that river to go in here and then stop there. We'll see. I have to look at this area again because it deserves some other. But this is an underground river, so it can be a river that comes from anywhere. So yeah. So this is the most obvious one, and then there is one tiny little one here somewhere in If I remember here, there is an underground river that goes from somewhere. Oh, yeah, here. This one, it disappears in a hole here and then comes out at the lake here or something. So this was described in the Living Greyhawk adventure that it disappeared. That was done by one of my friends, Jason King. He wrote that adventure, and I put it in, and he was so happy when I put it in. So it's kind of fun. So that is 2 examples. I think there's a couple of more that I forgot about it. So yeah. So that's a couple of them, and there I've seen in Germany there's one. I forgot the name now, but I've seen it in Bavaria. There is a river, an underground river that goes underground for several kilometers, like 5 miles or maybe even longer, and it comes out, and it's really really cool. It just comes out of the mountain, so to speak, because the area has a lot of limestone, so the river have cut through and then found a way through the limestone and then came out afterwards. Okay, so let's continue this here. Yep, yeah, Jason, that is interesting because I have this area here, and that is yeah, and that is something because I remember reading that, and what I simply assume is back in the day this was a plateau, a high plateau during the Sewell times, and then as part of that cataclysm the area sunk. So these were holes in the lakes before, so to speak. Now they're just big sinkholes because some of the ground sunk even more. So there was a river here originally that cut its way through and was seeping, so the lakes was seeping out underground south, so to speak. But this geography is all changed, so that river is now a distant memory, so to speak. But the cool thing is that part of that river can now be found as just like lava tubes, so it will be it will be part of the dungeon system that is under here, so to speak. And because the area is dried out and it's so low now that the river that it doesn't flow out, so to speak. Yep. There is a sneak peek at it if you look at the cold version of Earth and then the hot version. There are pre-cataclysm area, but those are very very rough, so to speak, very large scale. Yeah, Metro Candle, it has several regions. The most detailed one is in this area here. If you go to Melcott, hang on a second, I can probably find that. Let's see here. I'm going to just find Melcott here. Melcott.com. There we go. Here, if we go to melcott.com, I'm going to put the URL in chat. There is actually some maps here, so places of wonder, I think it's over here, so somewhere around here he has an Underdark. Here we go, regional survey of Underdark, so I'm putting the link to that one too. So this is the best description that I know of, so to speak. So what Dennis Tetro, also known as Maldin, he went through a lot of the adventures, like yeah, there's a bunch of adventures and stuff. They are listed here in here. So there's a whole bunch of them, like the Vault of the Drow, yeah, and several other adventures, and they're described here, so to speak. So this is, I think, the best work when it comes to the Underdark that someone has put together. So you have a whole bunch of stuff that are from there. And then there are some caves and caverns, especially up here. You have the Lost Cavern of Solkenth, and you have some other adventures and stuff that details some of them. And then you have the Castle of Greyhawk, of course, has a whole bunch of stuff under it. But I wouldn't say extensive. Underdark is only written about or like mentioned, but not detailed. So the only detailed accounts is for this area here. Yeah, and then we have the sea of dust under here from the Sea of Death book that Gord's having. So yeah. Well, you can probably make it as massive as you like, and just like Jason said, there's talks of enormous amount of underdark, so to speak. So there's plenty of potential for lots of underdark. We have a whole planet, and even this the Flanies is big enough to have lots of it. And it's also up to you as a DM what kind of geology you like, so to speak. If you have fantasy geology, you can simply have lots of cool stuff, and you have the Rift Canyon can have an opening for enormous amount of cool, fairly accessible Underdark too. So let's go in, and I want to these kind of blurry areas. I'm going to see if we can make them into dried out lakes and stuff. So I'm just gonna add in the river going down here. And now we need to look at the the area. So I want the river to go that direction here. Yep. Yeah, and you have the little mini map here up on the top right where you can see what I'm even when I'm zoom in, so you can see that red little square is there. Yep. Definitely, Alex. This is some of these dried out lakes probably have like some an aquifer under them, so there probably plenty of water but hard to access in areas down here. So if you drill deep, and then you have the lake Udrukar in the middle, still has even some water above ground, so to speak, but it probably has lots of water filled underdark or underground down there. So and that little gap there looked so tempting, so I'm going to use it to go through with the river. And now we need to, yeah, I'm just gonna continue down here. And like I said before, we probably need to tweak the surrounding terrain a little bit here. And these are just guides. I have to go in and we have to edit them in a later stage. We'll see how far we get today. The important bit is to kind of lay out the layout, or that was that was kind of not the way to say it, but to sketch it out so we can get it in like that, and then work this out. Yes, yeah, the red squares is not that big. Okay, now I can increase the bit here, and I can probably add a fourth here so we can, there we go. So I'm going to take that river here, and now I'm going to go down here and make it a little bit bigger. I'm trying to use the features that are on the landscape already or in the landscape, and then use it to make sure. Okay, there we go. Now I think it's time to do a first save here so we don't lose this. Hi Troy. Hello, welcome. Yeah, I think we could probably work that in, and that might be too much in the scope of terrain change here, but it's definitely something that I will add in when when I get to it. I say when because that's my intention, to go in and work this in the in World Machine, and especially uh, going west here. I will see this will be a perfect spot here somewhere to have a canyon, a canyon feature here. So the key here is to figure out how high above sea level this is, because in order to have like a deep river canyon, it needs to be significantly above sea level, which I think it is. So it is probably high enough to have some canyon-esque, and I can see this area here and this area here. So we can probably do some fun stuff. We can see what we can do in Photoshop, because I've allocated October to basically work on this. So this is going to be, I have barely started, so this is only a little bit, but I want to go into October and work most of October to work on this. So I plan to add a couple hundred hours of work into this to for this update here, and then have November and December to work on all the settlements and stuff like that, and produce the atlas and the final thing, and have that ready by the end of the year or Christmas. Okay, so now we have that one. So now we have another one, and that's the river that is already added here into this lake. And now I think that it doesn't seem to me realistic that it goes over this hump. So this one probably goes down here and joins here, and then we have a major one going that way. You can see that I've already charted in here, and there is a canyon there. So we should, and that means that this lake was probably not as much bigger. It was just deeper back in the day. So we have a river here going through here and into here, and then we have like a flat lake here, and then a river there and rivers here. So I'm going to make that, we can have that one going down here. So we have 3 here. So yeah, so I think here is the spot where it needs to go out, and I'm going to use that little valley in there and make it like here. And then we have a series of waterfalls and stuff when it goes through there. Then it can cut its way through here. And then we have to adjust the terrain, and that means create some cool kind of canyon-esque features and stuff in order to spice it up, because fantasy terrain should not be dull. Some areas, it's cool to have dull areas, but you should have interesting features almost everywhere. Yep, drainage basins like that are really interesting. It's kind of cool to see how the Mississippi and where you have halfway point, so to speak, where it drains west, or where it drains east or south, like in North America. So it's I think that I saw a video about that here, and there was like one spot where you say every river west of here drains west, and everything east of here drains into the Mississippi, so to speak, and it was it was really cool. And now we also need to look at the bigger picture here, because we have the south here. So we have, but these, I'm tempted to go from here to here, and then from here down here. So I think I will do that. Yep. Yeah, I did a river map where I actually mapped out all the drainage basins in the Flatneys, as that was part of the precursor to doing more detailed work, because then I needed to know which direction rivers were flowing, and so I can kind of get the leanings, so to speak, of the base elevation of the terrain right. So I've already mapped that out, and that was part of that's when this issue came up, because I wanted to figure out how the rivers actually drained here, if it had major rivers. Now most of these rivers are just seasonal at best, or just dried out sandy remnants in the landscape, so to speak. So let's make this a lake here, and then go here and just cut through here. Yep. Yep, David. This is a perfect example of a river that might exist for a few months, from like spring to midsummer or something like that, to some degree, and it will fill up the lakes here, and they will probably be full of bird life and stuff like that. And then in the high summer and the heat comes, some of it will be flowing all the way out to the Gulf of Gare, to the ocean, and a lot of it will evaporate away. And there will be a lot of wetlands here that are very seasonal. So there will be swamps and lakes and stuff for a few months, probably very thin ones, and then they kind of disappear. Yep. And there's also in Africa, there is a great example of a large river, the Okavango, that actually drains not to the ocean, but it flows out into a desert and evaporates into the desert. And that is a seasonal river. It rains in some of these areas are monsoon-like climate, so that you have heavy rains certain part of the year, and that creates a big river, the Okavango, that ends in a desert and creates a huge waterly delta that fills up and at certain time every year, and then stays for a few months, and then slowly dries out, and then there's a dry season where it's basically just a dusty desert, and then it fills up again. So it's the Okavango in southwestern part of Africa. Yep, yeah, we should definitely have a climate talk and stuff, but I'm not so sure that others might find it as interesting as I do, but I think we got into a dead end here, so I'm going to see if we can, I'm going to make the river a big bit and go back here a bit, because that one, I probably need to go through here, I think. 3, there we go. Yeah, so we have to talk to Jay and Mike and see if we can get them in on a climate discussion, because it might only be me who babbles about maps and climates and stuff. And I'm probably going to skip that bit here and then go east and go around that bulge there and then go through here. And then map out that one and then follow this contour line. No, it didn't look right, so I might have to redo this bit here. I'm going to do this, and then we're going to redraw the remake the terrain around it here. Yeah, that I actually need to redo some of the terrain around here, and then we make the river go into the lake there, because that makes most sense. And maybe remove, well, that's something to work on too. And the same thing here, so we need to kind of level out stuff. But here we have a perfect good one down here, so I'm just gonna add in here, and then we have one going through, because there is already a river valley here, so I'm just gonna go through that one. And there is a canyon here already, so it's kind of pre-made. And then we go into the other one. So there we go. And we probably need to widen this, so I'm going to make it go wider here. So I'm going to add another one here. Oh, that was too much. There we go. The reason I'm painting in this wider is because I can use these masks when I'm doing the next future steps here. So there we go. Now we have that river. Now we need to look east here and see. We have an embryo here. We need to take that one out and then create this. And this can be an interesting sinkhole with lots of water underground. Well, it's kind of, I create the recipes, and then I kind of tell World Machine what recipe to use where and how much of it, and I blend different recipes. So I build the whole thing from scratch, but it's built in a multi-stage. So you have like various basic, a recipe is like a a multitude of fractals that are baked together with different forms of erosion and things like, yeah, types of erosion and other filters and stuff, and that creates a certain type of terrain. And then in order to make more of an interesting natural look, I take several of these recipes and vary them according to another set of fractals over a landscape, so to speak. And that is something I create the recipes manually, and then the recipes generate a lot of basically computer generated elevation data, and then I can go in and blend different versions until I get what I want. And then I can also go in and hard code and say I want a river here and a valley here, so to speak. So I can hard code what areas are influenced by what, so I can place the mountains. I can't tell exactly the shape of a mountain, but I can tell where the mountain should be or not, so to speak. That's the thing. So it's a lot of taking bits and pieces and kind of, it's a bit like herding cats. You can basically scare them generally in a certain direction, but you can't tell a individual cat exactly where to go. So it's, yeah, fractals is very much like herding cats. And go in here and do some stuff. So there we go. And this one needs to be widened, so I'm going to, there we go. And I can probably create a little bit of a lake here. It's kind of, it looked like it was an area that was in need of a lake. So I'm going to create a little bit of a lake. So there we go. We can probably have some lakes up there, but I'm going to skip that a little bit for now. That's something for the future. But here we have more rivers. Okay, let's see here. Do you think the foothills of the mountains? Yes, over here. Well, these would be, they're so far away from there's several reasons that this area here is very dry, and one of them is magic, but you don't need much of a magic because there's several reasons. First of all, this is 30 degrees north from and that means that it's firmly in the desert zone. And secondly, it's the winds are predominantly from the east here, which means that you have the tallest mountain, the Crystal Mist, and the Barrier Peaks, and the Sulhout. They block most of the weather, so you get like the dry side here, so to speak. So you get the rain shadow from the mountains, and then it's also high elevation, which means that a lot of weather doesn't make it up here. So there's 4 reasons, or there's a multitude of reasons that this area is dry. So it's a bit like Central Asia and the Tibetan Plateau and stuff. It's on the rain shadow, it's high up, and it's in the desert zone. So you don't need much magic, but some magic helps making it even worse, so to speak. Okay, so now we have a couple of different options here. We can either take these rivers and go with them here and somehow add them into this river. That's one option. The other option is to somehow make them go this way and go south that way. So in a way, I kind of the most natural for me feels like they should go that way, but I know that's the assumption that down on the screen or the paper is down. So I know that should not be the case, but a lot of cartographers always fall for that thing, that rivers have a tendency of flowing down paper, so to speak, and that is not the case. But I'm thinking that this could have been a larger lake, and then we can kind of drain it through here and then go south. I think I'm going to opt for that option here. So we're going to create a river going through here, and then we can kind of, but this is probably, if this is an interesting sinkhole, then these will be dried out rivers that basically have no or not much water in them at all. But the, this flows from here, so this river but this part here will be dry, will be bone dry. And if that's been the case for a long time, then I'm going to remove this bit here, and we can say that this open sinkhole here has been for a long time and is water filled. So we can have like a huge water world under here. That will be kind of an interesting thing, and that might also be why Arir, that realm, is good to have here, because they have a water reservoir of good water that they can actually use. So it will be interesting. It will be a desert realm with an underwater world. That will be kind of fun. Well, yeah, you need to have some water source in order to have caravans. But remember, this is a fantasy world, so if they have clerics and stuff, they can create their own water. So you don't necessarily need natural water. You can use magic as well. But and then we have here, we should have a little bit of river. So I'm going to add a river here that comes out here. Oh, that didn't look good. I'm just going to be lazy and just add it here now. And just add a little river here. Then I'm going to add in the river here. There we go. And then work on this river here. And this is really difficult because this landscape is just fake 3D, so you have to kind of assume things and then make it more detailed afterwards. But this makes for an interesting thing, meaning we have an underground, a lake here that is a big hole in the ground, so to speak. So when that overflows, that will be we can have an ancient. I'm going to reduce the opacity to like 30% and then paint in a faint little trace of a river here. There we go. So we get the occasional overflow if there is enough to exactly under desert feature. Yep, a water feature under the desert, which can make sense why there might be a realm here, because they have a good access to water, continuous water, and they have a steady water supply. And also why the city of Kanak is down here, because they also have a water supply there. But that might be salty down there because it's a thing that dries out and evaporates away. And evaporation lakes, they tend to be salty. But then you have salt, which is also a precious commodity. Yeah. But I think if it's a deep hole like that, that means that it will not evaporate away. Because if it's a hole filled with water, then the sun can't get to the majority of it. So that means that it will not dry out. But a lake that is over a large area that is not deep, that means that it evaporates away. But a hole like that is deep will keep its water through the hot season. Yeah, salt mines of Kanak. Yep. That I think is very much should be a thing. And it might not be so much mines, it might be salt flats, so they openly mine it, so to speak. It's more like the salt fields of Kanak, where you take water that is spread out over and you simply go in and chop off the salty that is like snow on the ground or minerals that is on the ground. So it might be the salt fields of Kanak or something. But I'm sure there might be more salt underground as well. So yeah. And here we have something that looks a little bit like a canyon, so I'm going to use that feature here and then make the river snake over here and go here. And then we pass around here and go through around the hills and keep meandering a little bit. The important bit here when you do this is to try and get natural variation and not draw long straight lines. That's the key, because then it doesn't look natural, especially at this point, because you have to realize if I put a hex layer here, this is 12-mile hexes. So that means that each of these hexes here is 12 miles. So that a long straight river over 12 miles, not even railways are straight. Very few railways are straight for 12 miles. So rivers would definitely not be straight. There are some areas here that look suspiciously straight. So I think I'm going to, that one didn't look that good. So I'm going to tweak it already and just go in here and paint over the ugly bits there. And go down to 3. And first I'm going to paint in that bit here. And then I'm going to see if I can do it like that. Looks much better. And then take this here and try and follow the landscape. Yep, that looked better. Much better. We'll see if we get that bump in the internet connectivity, because I usually drop frames and stuff around 7 when everybody turns on their Netflix and stuff in the areas. We'll see if that happens this. Hopefully will not happen this week. Okay, so there we go. Now I think it's time for another save here while I'm start contemplating what to do next. So we're starting to get the majority of the layout of the rivers. Now we need to go into this region in the mountains here. We have this bit here and a little bit there we need to look into. And there might be some lakes we need to add in there too. And then we have this area and then this bit here. And then there is the northern bits here to look into. But I'm going to start here where it's most obvious, up in the mountains. Okay, so let's go here. Yep, high-speed rail for Greyhawk 2000. Yep. I wonder what kind of in Britain you always have these kind of cool HS2 or would that be JH2 or something like that? So these acronym for the infrastructure projects. Yeah. And if magic hasn't faded, they can do cool stuff with magic, I guess. And here comes the interesting bit here, because we have some mountains here. We have some, this is a cool kind of canyon-esque feature here. So, some of these features that Bryce creates are really, really cool. Sometimes I'm actually thinking about starting to use Bryce things as an input for further stuff, so to speak, because Bryce had some really cool features you can paint in. So I'm going to do some experiments with that in the future and use that as interesting seeds, so to speak. Yep, I know that HS2 is that cool thing. Is that the one going from middle England or like the middle of the UK down to London? HS2 from like Birmingham and Leeds and whatnot, and then connects down to, if I remember correctly. Okay, so HS1 is the channel tunnel. Ah, I didn't know that. And I guess HS3 will be connecting Scotland if they still want to be in the UK. Yeah. Okay, now comes the decision here. Should we open up a valley into this and from here, or should it go south into here? Okay, Birmingham to London. Yep. Okay, I think I will go connect these two and then go that way. I think that's the way to go. So I think I can almost trace something through here. So yeah, that will be, and then I have to adjust the landscape a bit. So let's start here. I think it's kind of cool in that western end here, and we can kind of have a going through that valley in there. Okay, Northern Powerhouse Rail. So was I right when I simply predicted that it will be connecting Scotland or further north in using the HS3? So I'm probably going to go this way down here and then through that gap there. I think it's the seems to be the most natural looking way. No, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to paint over that bit, and I'm going to go in here. Okay, so it's, yeah, you have that cross rail that goes across London east to west, but is that high speed or is it just normal train going through London? I'm sorry for the tangent, but I'm kind of curious because these are projects that have, last time I was in London 10 years ago, they were starting to build, and there was like a mess of building tunnels and stuff. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to go through it, and that is an area for a little lake there, I think. And I'm going to remove part of that there. Ah, okay, Crossrail is a metro line. Okay, yep. Uh-huh, so it's the Elizabeth line. Cool. Here we go. Yeah, that's what I thought, that it was built to a higher standard than the older underground or tube trains. And I don't want these kind of L stuff like that. That doesn't cut it. So let's have it go that way. Maybe even let it go that way. And then go through here, in there, and then flow through a little canyon in there. Okay, yeah, we'll see when they can. Infrastructure projects are tricky at best, and in highly developed areas like southern in England, especially southern England, in the London area, must be a nightmare to do. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Cool. I need to try it next time we get to London. Hopefully in October next year I can go to England and go to the UK and England and London and come and see some of this and connect to all my friends in or at least some of my friends in the UK. That will be awesome. Let's see here. There we go. And then now we're starting to get into something here. And then there's actually a little canyon going through here. That one, I'm going to use that one and go in here. Perfect. Okay, yeah. There we go. Now we just have to connect one going here into here and then a little stump going there or something going through here. We'll see. So we can just add one from here, I think would be cool. And then add it there, across there, and then create a little bit of a lake situation there, and then let it go over here. And let it flow there. Yeah, that's cool. You keeping a lot of awesome connections to everybody. That's fantastic. Yeah, that will be interesting. We have some. We always in Greyhawk we always have the Doom Grinder. That's like the Greyhawk version of a TBM, and not that universally liked though. So that's like infrastructure projects in the real world. There's a lot of controversy. So the Doom Grinder falls into that narrative really well. There's a lot of Greyhawkers who are not that keen on the Doom Grinder, including myself. So it's kind of funny. Yeah. Okay, that valley there looks so tempting for a river, but so we'll see if I can restructure the landscape. Now we're going to add a little bit of one from here too, I think, so we can see what we can add one down here, and then see if I can tweak the landscape to actually make sense, so to speak. Hang on a second, I'm going to go through there and then see if we can tweak it through there. There we go. Yep, loves to dig greedily and deep. Yep, that's very true. And now when I'm thinking of it, I want to add a little bit more river up here. So something like that, maybe. And on this map, it feels good that the river kind of goes into the dark there and disappears into that. So I'm going to have it there. Well, hi Christopher. Yeah, this is the terrain that is the base of both the 576 map and the 598 map. And so what I'm doing here is I'm updating it for the 2021 edition. So I'm adding and revising the river systems here in the southwest. So this is the terrain that will be the new base updated terrain for both of them, so to speak. And then there will be certain things that I will tweak afterwards. There are certain things like the defiled glades are not on the 576 maps and stuff like that. So there are a few things like that that needs to be tweaked back and forth. So there will be a year adjustment too. But these kind of things like rivers and stuff will be the same on both. Okay, so now we have here is something that I want to, that looks so cool that I want to have a river going through here, and I can add a little lake or something up here. That will be kind of cool, and then we can have a little waterfall. But actually we can just make a lake here too. There we go. And then we can skip the rivers and we can just have an underground river or something coming here or something. I'm going to skip that for now, so to speak. So yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, this is the where a lot of the colorless fire and invoked devastation happen in these areas. So they're affected by it. But like I said earlier, this will be a fairly bone dry area anyway for many other reasons. So I think that the devastations only helped what was bad to become way worse, so to speak. Which is another reason why I think that this might have very well been when the Baklunish and the Origians earlier on moved through here and lived here. This area was probably affected by the aftermath or the late stages of an ice age, because during an ice age this area was wetter and colder, so it was not that much of a desert. It was more like a prairie or steppe or something, and the areas up here was tundra and full of forest. So it was like a boreal forest here, and this area here was more like a steppe area or something. So that to me makes more sense, that the Origians and the Beclunish wanted to move in when the climate was much better than it is now, and then it dried out and warmed up, and then you added the cataclysms on top of it. Oh, Troy, I forget sometimes which area is which, so to speak, but this is the at least this is the Beclunish area. So if I remember correctly, this was the reign of the no, this was the invoked devastation on this side, I think, and then the reign of colorless fire on the Seoul side, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But I might be wrong. So if Jason, if you're in the chat here, please correct me on that one. Okay, so here we have, now we covered some of this area. So now we can look in here. We should probably have one coming out here, but no, I don't want to. There will be rivers here, but right now I don't feel like these. No, I'm going to skip them for now. Yep. Oh, thank you, Pete Bog. Thank you. Yep. So let's be a little bit lazy here, because I don't want to go in and re-edit. There's some there I need to re-edit then that one, by the way, so we can fix that error while we see. This is part of the render artifacts, because I have this area here was 1 bit and that area there was 1 bit, and then when I join them in Bryce, I get these kind of cutoff areas, and normally I try to catch as many as possible of them and paint over the ugly bits, but this one I've forgotten. So I'll go in here and just paint over some of this area here, and I borrow some. There we go. I think that was, yeah, that was it. So then we fixed that area, but now we need to, so I can probably add in, there is a perfect spot to start that river too. So I'm going to go in. Hang on a second. Now I need to make sure that was the right. Yeah. And I'm going to name it added rivers. There we go. Need to spell better. So added rivers. There we go. And I'm also going to lock the position of that layer. Okay, there we go. So let's go and add some rivers. We have one from here, so I'm just gonna start it there, and I'm going to have a little one river here. I have a two pixel river. There we go. And then let it flow out like this, and then have it go somewhere like that. And then I'm going to have one going up here, and then have one coming from here. Will probably be a good spot. We have to remember, these are rivers that are big enough to take a small boat through if they were full of water. So the really, all the smaller ones will be added when I go in, and if I do it as detailed as I worked on my Southern Shieldlands map for my campaign, then you can see rivers that are 5 foot wide. So then you can see all the little creeks and stuff. And since, again, we have to remember that each of these pixels is 12 miles, which means that each pixel here is a mile across. So even if this is only a pixel or two across, that means that there is a river valley that is almost a mile wide. So, but it's a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit iffy. So we have to. It's a bit symbolic, so it's not perfect. This is not engineering. This is fantasy cartography done with primitive tools 20 years ago. So it's kind of it's not that accurate. So we have to. It's not satellite engineering or rocket science. So we have to take that into account. So it's always an interpretation when when you move over and make a version that is improved on, that always needs to be interpretation of the previous maps, just like I interpreted Darlene map and other sources. And I think that I'm going to continue that river valley there, so I'm going to make it bigger and actually remove that one. And go back to 3. There we go. Okay, I'm going to follow that one here, I think. Then we go that way. No, I'm going to delete that bit there. And then I actually feel like I'm going to go in that way. Okay, so here we have some rivers. Now I think I'm going to add one river here, or that way rather, and then one there, and I think we're done here. So I'm going to do this the other way around. I'm going to start from here and just go here. Okay, thank you, Alex. Yep. Now comes the tricky bit here to find, but I think I want to go that way up the valley there. I think that will be, and like I said before, then I need to go in and tweak the surrounding terrain as needed, so to speak, because this is where I think the drainage basins should be. So I cannot go in that one in there. That is river. Let's see here. Now we need to see if we can tweak. There should be one here too, so we can kind of add one there. There we go. Okay, now I think we covered at least, well, I can probably continue that one up the valley here a bit. Yeah, okay, let's go that way then. Somewhere like that, and we'll see what I need to tweak. Okay. Now we have this area, so let's save again here so I don't lose any extra, so I don't have to redo things again, so to speak, just in case the power will go out or something. But I'm glad that the connection is holding up tonight. So, and now I have a week. I have a game session on Sunday, the 19th session in my Shieldlands campaign, and then next week we'll be all prepping for my presentation at the virtual Greyhawk con in a little over a week. So that will be, or in 2 weeks rather. So that will be planning. Next week we'll be planning. Oh, it's not 2 weeks. It's 1 week. So I better keep planning and making sure that I actually get I know what I will have to. I know my topics and stuff. Now I just need to make finish some sketches and some of the finished graphics and stuff like that. So it's coming. Yep. Yep. It's tricky. Okay, so here we have to start thinking about how the drainage table. I want to somehow it feels more natural for me to drain into this one than here, so to speak, because this is probably a ridge here. So this is higher, and these things will drain into this lake and then go out that way. And then this here can, well, I'll think about that one later, but this here should go in here and then out that way, and then something here should go here and in there too. So I think that's the general idea here. So I'm going to, we probably have something that can come out of here. So I'm going to start here and then work my way up here. That already, I think I did a mistake there. There we go. And I'm going to do this, I think. I want to reach this area up here and then continue here. And then I need to, this ridge here, I want to go across so I get into this area here. And now I had a tickly throat, so I need to take a cough drop and drink a little bit of water. Yeah, like doing projects like this, it's something you have to, it's really like eating an elephant. You have to do it bit by bit, and then you have to kind of think through each step and then do it gradually, bit by bit. There we go. Okay, let's start here, go through this bit here. It looks a little bit, it can probably be a canyon through here. I know this is abusing the kind of the already made terrain a bit, so this is something I need to adjust here, and then I need to keep this as the working primitive but model for future work, so to speak. So that's the big issue here. So there we go. Okay, now back to, I'm going to follow the flat bit here, and then I'm going to go up here, and then trying to follow the contour. And now I'm not really sure where to go. I'm just gonna go up here and then through here, probably up to this spot here. I'm going to stop there for now. I think that's enough. We're not aiming for total perfection, just to improve what's already there and make it a better guide for future upgrades, so to speak. Because this is kind of fake 3D, so it is a bit kind of not far from perfect, so to speak. Oh, that, okay, we do a little lake there. Then I'm going to stay east of that hill there, and then I'm going to continue, and then I'm going to add it in there. I think that could work. Yeah. I think we should not overdo it, but this area here is a high ridge from all the way over there, so maybe we can have something that starts there that is not being anywhere nearly remotely filled, but I think there should be. No, I skipped that for now. It hasn't been a river there, so now we should not overdo it. So let's stay with this. There's interesting. Here looks like a river valley, but I'm going to stay away from that point. I think it's enough. We have created enough of a drainage basin in this part here. So now I'm going to save again, and then we're going to move into this bit here and see if we can cover that bit too. I haven't even looked at the clock, so yeah, we have another 20 minutes or half an hour so we can work on things here. So yeah, I've just been working. Haven't even looked at the map or at the clock or what time it is. So that's when I'm carried away with this. Normally I would listen to music, podcast, or some Netflix or some TV series or something, or watch it on a little bit on the side, and then just keep. I don't watch drama or anything like that when I do stuff like this. I usually watch old BBC documentaries, the stuff that I already watched. I just watch them again just to remind myself, like interesting thing like geology, history, or something like that. 12 hours about the history of Istanbul or something like that. So some of this boring stuff that makes most people just die from boredom. That's my kind of TV when I do this. Documentaries. Okay, so now we have some dried out lakes. So I'm going to make this into a bigger area of dried out lakes, I think. And then we can have some there's always a hint, almost a hint at a river valley or something down here. So, or maybe that part. Maybe this can just be a basin. Maybe I was kind of a bit over enthusiastic about rivers. Yeah, I'm probably going to skip that bit for now. Yeah, I think that bit actually. Let's see here. What should we do? Oh, I think that's kind of good enough, I think, when it comes to that bit. Okay, so let's go back to the islands down here and see what we can do. There's some islands to fill in that we did last. I can continue to work on the islands a bit. So we have new, but on the other hand, we can let's do. Now I'm sorry. My brain is a little bit mushy here. So let's do look at the lake situation here before we leave this area and see where we should have some dry lakes. So we have this area here, I think, is a flat prime candidate for some dry lakes. So I'm going to add, now I'm going to have a much wider brush like that. And I'm going to add a little, there's a little bit of shape dynamics, and I'm going to paint in the area here. Patrick, I love those. You found the emojis for this. Yeah. So I'm going to take the flat area here and just kind of take some of this area. We can have an island in the middle there. Something like that. And then we actually have, first I can remove these because now I'm back here working again here, so we can remove these, and then we can go in here and we can actually remove these rivers here too. There we go. Well, area, we always have the barrier peaks for, that's like Greyhawk's Area 51, but David is a spelljammer expert, so he knows best where to put stuff like that in here. I'm not so sure I like but there is some. Let's do a smaller one here, and oh, that was the wrong one. Added ribbon, there we go. There we go. So that's one lake. That's true, David. It's the kind of sci-fi connections I'm less keen on, so to speak. I don't like androids and laser guns, but like I said before on Legends and Lore stuff, if you just explain it fantasy enough and tone down the don't use the language of sci-fi to me and tell me it's animations or whatever, then I might I fall for it. Exactly, Pete Bog. That's a good idea. Valley of the Mage is, to me, ripe for exploitation or development, so to speak, further development. Okay, so now we have, I think this area here looks to me ripe for being a lake area. So I'm going to, or dried out lakes, because this is not water-filled lakes. These are kind of salt flats or old ancient lake beds. So these are the ones that might flow over in summer or like spring and summer and then dry out during fall and winter. They're dry. So there we go. There we have a lake. I'm tempted to do more of this, but this is actually based a little bit on previous designs. So we can maybe go in and make it a little bit bigger like this here and make it a bit bigger so we can kind of, and now I'm going to make it a bit bigger here and say that I'm going to paint in where I think because this is an upper layer on top of it, so this is just a sketch layer. So I'm going to use this for added rivers. Hang on a second here. Come on here. This is kind of, I'm kind of, gotcha. The river, we should have this one on top of the rivers. There we go. That's why I got worried because you could see the river. I don't want to see the rivers through here, so that's why. So here we go. And this doesn't look that big, but if we put a hex on top here, so this is actually a lake that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hexes. So it's like 100 miles. So 12, no, it's like, yeah, 60, 70 miles. So yeah. So it is not a small lake, it's kind of a large lake. Okay, let's see what we got more for. And then we have this here should be a lake too. So I'm going to put in one of these flats that used to be a lake in wetter times. And let's see here, I can paint over these bits here. So here we have another potential lake when if it gets wetter for some reason, this will be another area of lake. Right there. Let's split this up into. I don't like the shape of these. I'm going to make it into. There we go. And then we have a small lake here. There we go. And then a bigger one here. Hi, Brian. Welcome. Good to see you. Welcome. I'm painting lakes in the dry steppes area. So I'm putting in what is the drainage, the river system here, but it's kind of a seasonal at best and mostly bone dry. But these ancient river valleys or rivers that were here in wetter times and colder times back in the day. So now in the 570s and 590s and stuff, when most campaigns take place, this is dry desert, but seasonal rivers come. So when you have the snow melt up in the mountains, that's when these lake areas can turn into like shallow lakes, or they can turn into wetlands and stuff that could be seasonal for maybe just a few weeks, maybe a few months of the year, and then they dry out again due to evaporation from the dry desert climate. So there we have another lake. Makes sense when you have a lot of rivers flowing together like that. And then we have here should be a lake here too. Or the past ancient lake, so to speak, or a possible lake. And this one has some little islands in here, so I'm going to leave those bits here and then fill out here as well. Eel Pie Island. I've never heard of the Eel Pie Island. That sounds interesting. Yeah, definitely there can be some deep water reservoirs and aquifers in down under here, definitely. And one of them even goes out into the open, and that's this one here. Like the visible bit of a deep lake that could be kind of a water-filled underground, which would be kind of cool to have a water-filled underground in the desert. I kind of made that. It's been there for like 10 years, but no one has paid attention to it much, so that might be something to put like a blog post about, or make something for a future possible article in Earth Journal or something, and detail the desert water underworld or something. Oh, okay, in middle of the Thames. Okay. That's a good question, Brian. I think that the scale here is probably too large for that to be, but I can clearly see this area here being an area that can have lots of stuff like that, because this will be an area that at least for a long time will probably have more wind erosion than water erosion in a lot of areas, because it's been so dry for so long that this area here is probably filled of interesting features that have wind eroded due to wind and cold sun, like hot, cold, and wind rather than water. And then you have water erosion in these kind of river valleys that are partial part of the year, but the rest of the landscape is so bone dry that it's like desert erosion. And now I have a little doggy that wants back up on the couch. Oh, here we go. So, okay. So back to figuring out some lakes here. So we have this area here is kind of, I think I'm going to clean that up later on, but I think this area here is an interesting candidate for to add some lakes around here, I think. Or dried out remains of lakes. There we go. The treat beggar, yes. Minnie is very much a treat beggar, and I've had the same variant of treats here in at her couch in my office for like 3 weeks. So Minnie doesn't like it anymore. So she's telling me that in all shapes and forms that she wants some new treats. The problem is that they're in the store. They didn't have that many types of dog treats. Dog treats seems to be affected by the global supply constraint, so to speak. So even dog treats. So Minnie now only has 3 types of treats, and she's starting to get bored of all 3 of them. So it's major drama in Minnie's life. Yep. Yep. This is I will use these white river lines and lakes as the mask for some more fancy Photoshop work, so to speak. But the idea first is to figure out, so I instead before I go and do all the fancy detail work, I need to figure out where to actually do all of it, so to speak. So I need to have come in with a plan and then execute the details and the fancy stuff afterwards. But I think that we covered it fairly well. I think we got a decent looking drainage of this whole area here, and we got the river flowing out. So, and then there is this part here actually drains north in this bit here, and then you have a high plateau here, you have a high plateau here, and then you have the old Spruce Mountains here, and then all here is higher than here, so to speak. So this is a lower bit here. So I think it makes sense and kind of works. So now I'm going to save again, and I think this will be it for working on the or now it's time to kind of look and see if I missed any particular. Well, we have that one. We should probably make that one a little bit bigger and kind of. Oh yes, I can. I make all sorts of DIY treats, everything from hot dogs to all sorts of yeah. And Minnie likes that anything that I eat is, or most of it, as long as it's not fruit or nuts, because she hates fruits and nuts. But anything like chocolate and all sorts of everything that is meaty, and she will devour it, so to speak, if I eat it. So even my protein drink, she loves that too. My chocolate protein drink, she loves it. But I love it too, so I don't give her too much because I don't think it's that good for her. And especially chocolate is not supposed to be good for dogs. So okay, so that lake there, and I think that kind of, now we can see if we have some areas up here we can. No, I think we covered it with lakes here too. Okay, so I'm going to save again, and I think that will be it for edits and stuff. So okay, yeah, this river is not named, so it will, but it actually goes off into the west. So let me show from my Earth model where this actually runs to, so to speak. So continents, there we go. We can show it. Here is the map. So here is the river on a continental scale, so to speak. So we have the Flanies here, and so these are the rivers. This bit here is what we worked on today. So we worked on from here to here. And now I might need to redraw this, but so I might I'm going to redraw these rivers here because they're just very rudimentary basics, and redraw this so they actually match this bit here. Oh wow, Troy, you teach your dog well. My Mini will not eat any of bananas or any of stuff like that. So yeah. Well, yeah, waterfalls. That's a great question, Brian. And I actually had some ideas that I made some symbols like little blue or white lines going across a double white line or something. So I'm working on symbology for that to do it, but I didn't dive that deep into symbology because I wanted to have, so I did some symbology on the water map. So let's see if I can find something like that here for the 576 map. So let's see here. Yeah, here we go. We have the rivers of, it says that it's corrupted, but it usually just takes a while for it to open. Here we go. So this is the river map, and if we go in here, you can actually see arrows that points to every direction, and there are some falls. There are some particular falls up here that I remember. So here is the waterfall. That's the waterfall symbol I experimented with. This is just an experiment map, so to speak. So there's a waterfall here, there's one there, some bigger ones here, and here is a whole slew of them. So this is a bit like the Niagara Falls of the Flanies. Is one up there, huge ones. And so this is a river map where I actually experimenting made the bigger rivers are much bigger, so they kind of, you can tell the relative sizes of some rivers to others, and every major river and even minor river have flow arrows so you can tell which direction they're flowing into. Yep. Yep, now I've heard horror stories about dogs and chocolate too. And Minnie loves chocolate, so I give her just small bits, and she doesn't seem to be ill of it. So she had too much chicken once, and that she didn't like that. So, and here's lots of waterfalls and stuff. So this is the river map. It's a concept that I want to dig into with GIS and stuff in the future, and especially when I start having more of a 3D model. But this is an interesting map. This was my first kind of take because I wanted to look at drainage maps because it was really a part of the to straighten out how the terrain actually functions, so to speak. And the functional part in the planetary model was to figure out, so I made sure that all the rivers were logical and they all drained into bigger rivers and stuff. And there, of course, there should be some exceptions here and there, but the France River is a weird one and so on. But most of the rivers should drain naturally, and this is the way to make sure that it all actually did. So it's kind of cool. This one you can download on my, it's actually on my website, so you can get it. And hang on a second, I need to figure out if I have it on my Notion, Rivers of Flanies. I think it is on my Notion website. So hang on a second here, let's go in. So I have my new repository. When you look at it on online, it's white instead of the dark mode, so it's only because I have it in the Notion. Oh Well, yes, David. This is actually that's a separate map, so I have it as separate layers. So I'm going to do work more on it in the future. So hang on a second here and see if we have the political map, river map. It's the 576 map. So let's see here, the 576. That was the atlas. Haven't I done? Okay, hang on a second. Go back here. 576 maps. Here we go. No, I haven't updated. It's going to be here. If it's not here, I'm going to upload it tomorrow. So I'm going to add it here. So it will be here tomorrow to download here. Yes, Charles. The river map is available. It will be available eventually. This was an idea that I put, so I can make a PDF out of it, but it is a little bit tricky to to separate because it's an experimental map I did, so it's only available as a JPEG. We work on something in the future and separate it into a PDF and stuff, but it is a bit tricky with all the effects and stuff to make it into a good PDF, so to speak. So oh, yeah, that's true. It might be where, where we're dropping frames. It says that it's in an excellent connection, but it might be that you guys have problem in your ends. The internet connection might be a bit kind of overburdened too. Because tonight it seems like I've had an excellent connection all evening, so to speak. But this was a first test to see if there's an interesting concept, and I think it's a useful type of map. So I'm definitely going to do more with this in the future. But this one will be uploaded so it is available for people to use and see how the river system actually functions, so to speak, on the Flanny. So you can see all that. And you see major rivers, and you can see the flow of things down here. So you have, and these color coded too. So the really dark here is ocean. So here is big enough for ocean going vessels, and then you have the smaller ones here are for like bigger, like smaller ships or really large boats. And then you have this color here, the more lighter blue here. It's for like river boats, flat buttoned like barges and stuff. And then you have here, it's for small boats like canoes and rowing boats and stuff like that can go on this part. And then of course that when you have a waterfall, that's kind of ends the river traffic. You have to take whatever but things go around it, so to speak. But there are no major waterfalls on these major rivers. So here it's an interesting one because this one is wide enough for almost ocean going traffic the whole way, so to speak. So you have very interesting connections here where you have, here you can go all through the Nesser and you can go across the Nurdöv. You can go up here to Stoink and you can go past here and all the way up here using the big ships. And the same thing up the Aton Samai up here too. Oh, sorry, the Velverdiva all the way up here. So it's kind of, the Flennies has a lot of interesting waterways that opens up this way. And these are color coded according to the descriptions in my interpret. Both I used two types of input. I used the descriptions in the setting books because they talk about the rivers, and then I made some tweaks and added further refinement from my judgment of what I think the terrain looks like. So it's a combination of the two, so to speak. But you have interesting from Thornward, you can use barges and stuff all the way down here. So you can basically have trade using boats all the way from the ocean to Thornward, which means that it's a very, very strategic spot, so to speak. It's probably one of the most strategic spots in the whole of the Flannies. And so it's kind of super it's kind of it was an interesting map to make. Yep. So it's one of these things, but I'm going to upload it and put it up so you can all have it, so to speak, and find it. It's available through my Dropbox. So if you go to my website and go to Greyhawk content and go to the 576 or the Dropbox, you can get it there. But I'm going to put it on my Notion too. So hang on a second. Let me give you guys all the links here so you can kind of, there you have all the links. I'm going to copy them and paste them into chat here. There you have all the links to my website and my Patreon and stuff. And I have to, before we end here, I have to say a big thank you to all my patrons who makes this work possible for me to spend hours and hours of doing this and getting the computer equipment, all the software and all that, so to speak, to sit and work on this. So thank you so much, guys, for all the interest and support and so on to doing this. So I hope this was a little bit interesting. It was not so much map technical, it was more kind of geography today, but I think it's important to think about a setting from a geography perspective. It's one of these interesting perspectives that often gets overlooked. And I want to always shout out more for geography in fantasy settings, so to speak. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I will jump on the Cannon Fire Greyhawk chat in a little bit when I finished up here and stuff. And so thank you everyone for stopping by, and we'll see about next week, because there will be something next week, I hope, but I will announce it as soon as I establish it. So hopefully next Friday, but it's a Greyhawk con, so it might be busy with all the other things, so it might not be a mapping stream next week. So yeah. Yep. So yeah, that's the most rivers connect to the south, which is kind of one of these weird artifacts that I tried to fix a little bit, so to speak. So, oh, thank you, Pete Bog, and yeah. So I'm going to put the end here, and then it is. Oh yeah, thank you, Troy. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here and helping me work on this for a couple hours. And I will work a lot on this, especially after Virtual Greyhawk. Then I will sit and have a couple of weeks of just working like crazy on this map. So there will be probably about 10 or 12 8-hour days of working on this Photoshop thingy, like I did here, for like 8 to 10 hours a day for like 10 days straight, and then get it sorted out, so to speak. Oh, thank you, Charles and Brian. Okay, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.